Recently, Jay Leno's garage, unexpectedly, became the subject of an FBI inspection. But what drew attention was not the millions of dollars worth of cars sitting inside. What was reportedly discovered there is what has left people questioning what Jay Leno is really keeping in that garage. For Leno, the garage has never been just a place to store cars. Some vehicles were once considered cars of the future. Some are among only a handful left in the world, and some are machines he personally helped bring back to life. But perhaps the most unbelievable thing is that Leno does not keep them behind glass like priceless pieces of jewelry. He actually drives them on the road, repairs them himself when problems arise, and even accepts that cars worth tens of millions of dollars should continue to live rather than sit motionless inside a museum. That is also what makes Jay Leno's collection so different. These cars are not simply preserved to be admired. They are brought back onto the streets and kept running. But if you only look at the cars, you still have not seen everything inside this garage. The FBI inspection has shifted attention towards something else. So what exactly did they discover inside the place where Jay Leno keeps his collection? Jay Leno, whose real name is James Douglas Muir Leno, was born on April 28, 1950, in New Rochelle, New York, but grew up in Andover, Massachusetts, in an ordinary family. His father worked in the insurance industry, while his mother was a homemaker. Nothing about Leno's childhood suggested that he would one day become a famous television star. In fact, he struggled academically because of dyslexia and was not an outstanding student. But from an early age, Leno realized he had a different ability. He could tell stories and make people laugh. One teacher encouraged him to focus on that talent, and that encouragement became one of the first turning points in his life. When he was young, Leno worked a number of ordinary jobs to make a living, including a period working at McDonald's in Andover. It was there that he entered a talent contest with a comedy routine and won. At the time, perhaps no one imagined that the young employee standing behind the fast food counter would one day become one of the most famous talk show hosts in America. After graduating from Emerson College in 1973, Leno began pursuing stand-up comedy and moved to Los Angeles. The early years were anything but easy. He performed at countless small clubs, constantly searched for opportunities, and was rejected when he tried to pursue acting. Some people even believed that his unusually long chin made him unsuitable for television, but Leno did not give up. In 1977, he made his first appearance on The Tonight Show, the legendary late-night television program hosted by Johnny Carson. From his early guest appearances, Leno gradually became a familiar face on American television. Then in 1992, when Johnny Carson retired, NBC chose Leno as his successor. It was one of the most pressure-filled moments of his career, because Carson was virtually a television legend at the time. Yet Leno developed his own style, friendly, accessible, and particularly good at turning ordinary everyday situations into humorous stories. From 1992 to 2009, and then again from 2010 to 2014, Jay Leno hosted The Tonight Show. For years, millions of Americans became accustomed to seeing him on their screens at the end of the day, telling jokes about life, culture, politics, and ordinary situations that anyone could encounter. That success made Leno one of the most famous and influential figures in American television. But what is remarkable is that he never completely abandoned stand-up comedy. Even after becoming famous, Leno continued performing because that was the profession he had started with when he was still unknown. Yet behind the television lights, Jay Leno also had a passion so powerful that it became almost a part of who he was: cars. At first, Jay Leno's garage was never created with the ambition of becoming a major television show. It began with Jay Leno's personal passion for automobiles and was developed into an online video series on NBC.com. In the early videos, Leno invited viewers into his automotive world, introducing special cars, telling the stories behind them, discussing their history and engineering, and taking them out for test drives. The format was fairly simple: But it was compelling because Leno was not merely a celebrity who happened to enjoy collecting cars. He genuinely spent enormous amounts of time studying them and had extensive knowledge of automotive history. Jay Leno's garage was already famous before the show appeared. His collection includes hundreds of vehicles, ranging from rare classic cars and race cars to supercars and bizarre machines that most ordinary people had probably never even seen. Leno particularly loves vehicles with a story, whether they are worth millions of dollars or are simply old cars he happened to come across. That diversity helped make videos about his garage increasingly popular. The online version even won an Emmy Award and gradually proved that Leno's passion for automobiles could become something much bigger. The turning point came in 2014, when CNBC produced a special titled Jay Leno's Garage, the Ultimate Car Week. Following the success of that special, CNBC decided to develop it into a weekly television series. On October 7, 2015, Jay Leno's Garage officially premiered. This was also a notable moment in Leno's career, because he had just left The Tonight Show in 2014 after many years at the center of American television. What made Jay Leno's Garage different from an ordinary car review show was that Leno did not simply stand in front of the camera and read specifications. He actually drove the cars, explored their engines, talked with the people who owned or built them, and sometimes tested vehicles under extremely unusual conditions. One episode might take viewers to a decades-old classic car, while another might feature a modern supercar, race car, motorcycle, or a vehicle so strange that finding a second one would seem almost impossible. For Leno, every car had its own story to tell. But in reality, the cars were only half of the story. One of the show's biggest attractions was the people behind those vehicles. Leno met collectors, engineers, racers, mechanics, and celebrities who shared his passion for automobiles. Some owned cars worth millions of dollars, while others had spent decades personally restoring a single old vehicle. As a result, viewers did not need to be automotive experts to enjoy the show. They could become fascinated by a person's story, and then, through that story, begin to understand why the car mattered so much. Jay Leno's personality also became an important part of the show's success. After decades in television, he had a natural ability to talk with people and turn technical information into stories that were easy to understand and entertaining. But unlike a host who merely plays the role of an expert, Leno genuinely had a deep passion for cars. He could talk for hours about an old engine, the history of a brand, or why a particular vehicle had been built in such an unusual way. As a result, Jay Leno's Garage combined knowledge, entertainment, and the feeling that viewers were being taken on a tour of a friend's collection by someone who was genuinely obsessed with automobiles. From its very first episode on CNBC, the show demonstrated considerable appeal. The 2015 premiere attracted approximately 966,000 viewers, making it CNBC's highest-rated original program at the time. The show's reputation was further reinforced by its prestigious guests, including U.S. presidents such as George W. Bush and Joe Biden, as well as technology billionaire Elon Musk, demonstrating an appeal that extended far beyond the automotive world and reached both political and business circles. Recognition from the industry itself provided another clear testament to the show's success. In 2016, Jay Leno's Garage won a Primetime Emmy Award in the category of Outstanding Short-Form Nonfiction Program. The award recognized not only the quality of the production, but also the show's creative storytelling and emotional connection with its audience. In 2021, Leno was inducted into the Automotive Hall of Fame for his contributions and influence on automotive culture. The final episode of Jay Leno's Garage aired in October 2022. However, the show did not end because Jay Leno had lost his passion for cars or because its audience had become too small. The primary reason was CNBC's changing strategy for its primetime lineup, including cuts to several original programs and a shift toward other types of content that better fit the network's new direction. In other words, it was essentially a restructuring decision by CNBC rather than a failure of the show itself. Jay Leno owns more than 180 cars. But if you asked a fan to name 5 vehicles from that collection, most could probably only remember 3. Among the famous McLarens and Duesenbergs are machines so unusual that even people who have watched his show for years might see them without realizing they are looking at something truly extraordinary. One of them was even believed to have almost disappeared from the world. That car is Jay Leno's Chrysler turbine car. In 1963, when most Americans were still accustomed to automobiles powered by traditional gasoline engines, Chrysler introduced something that looked as though it had come straight out of the future: the 1963 Chrysler turbine car. Instead of a conventional piston engine, the car used a gas turbine engine, a technology more commonly associated with aviation. Chrysler believed that turbine technology could usher in a new era for automobiles. Smoother operation, fewer moving parts, and most importantly, the ability to run on a wide variety of fuels. Chrysler genuinely wanted to put the car into the hands of ordinary people to see whether the technology could become part of everyday life. A total of only 55 Chrysler turbine cars were built, including 5 prototypes and 50 used in the public testing program. Between 1963 and 1966, 203, Americans took turns borrowing the cars for approximately 3 months at a time. They drove them to work, went shopping, took their children to school, and recorded their experiences so Chrysler could understand how a turbine-powered automobile actually performed in everyday life. What made the Chrysler turbine especially strange was its engine. It had very few moving parts compared with a traditional piston engine, did not require a conventional water cooling system, and could spin at speeds of tens of thousands of revolutions per minute. The car produced around 130 horsepower and up to 425 lb-ft of torque. But the most astonishing feature at the time was its ability to run on many different types of fuel, including diesel, kerosene, jet fuel, and unleaded gasoline. Chrysler even experimented with vegetable oil, and a famous story claims that Mexican President Adolfo López Mateos once ran the car on tequila. Today, only 9 Chrysler turbine cars remain in the world. One of those surviving examples sits inside Jay Leno's garage. He purchased the car from the Walter P. Chrysler Museum around 2008-2009. Leno's car carries chassis number 991242, and what makes it particularly remarkable is that it is still operational. According to sources documenting the surviving turbine cars, Leno's vehicle and one belonging to the Stahl's automotive collection are the only 2 privately owned examples that remain drivable. Jay Leno had loved this car since he was just 14 years old. As a boy, Leno saw the Chrysler turbine during an era when America was fascinated by the jet age, when jet aircraft, rockets, and the race to conquer space made people believe the future was about to change completely. For a boy fascinated by machines, the idea of putting a turbine engine resembling a jet engine into an automobile was surely something impossible to forget. More than 40 years later, that boy had become Jay Leno, one of America's most famous personalities and the owner of one of the most extraordinary car collections in the world. When he had the opportunity to acquire a Chrysler turbine, Leno did not hesitate. For years, Leno regularly took his car out onto the road, until one day, the aircraft-grade turbine engine suddenly seized. With a car nearly 60 years old and virtually no replacement parts available, the Chrysler turbine car instantly became an extremely expensive machine that was almost useless. To repair it, Leno had to turn to Williams International, a company with direct connections to engineers who had worked on the original engine. Eventually, Greg Williams, the head of Williams International, gathered around 60 former members of the Chrysler turbine program to help bring the engine back to life. When operating, it could idle at around 22,000 RPM and climb beyond 44,000 RPM, with operating temperatures exceeding 1300 degrees. This was no longer simply an antique sitting inside a museum. It was almost like a small miracle, fitted with 4 wheels and a steering wheel. The next car is one of the oldest automobiles in Jay Leno's collection. In 1934, while the United States was still trapped in the depths of the Great Depression, a $25,000 automobile was built for Josiah K. Lilly, the head of Eli Lilly and Company. It was the Duesenberg model J. Walker coupe, a car so special that it was not merely a luxury automobile, but a bespoke work of art. It is the only Duesenberg known to have this particular Walker coupe body style, making it virtually a one-off in American automotive history. To put $25,000 into perspective, a new Ford V8 at the time cost only around $515. From the moment it was built, the Duesenberg therefore belonged to a world that very few Americans could ever reach. The car's design was ahead of its time, with a streamlined body, low roofline, V-shaped windshield, and curves designed to reduce aerodynamic drag. The headlights were integrated into the fenders, giving it an appearance completely different from the boxier luxury cars of the era. Jay Leno particularly admired this design because it demonstrated that the people who built the car were already thinking seriously about aerodynamics as early as the 1930s. At around 70 mph, the car was reportedly capable of maintaining speed at lower engine RPM than conventional Duesenbergs, while the cabin was also quieter. Beneath that elegant exterior was an impressive machine. The Walker coupe used a 420 cubic inch Duesenberg straight-8 engine, producing approximately 265 horsepower. The completed car weighed more than 6,000 pounds, yet the engine was still powerful enough to propel it to a cruising speed of around 70 mph. In 1934, that was an extraordinarily impressive figure. Duesenberg was already a brand reserved for America's wealthiest elite, while the Walker coupe was created at an even higher level, a car designed to showcase its owner's wealth, power, and refined taste. Yet the car's fate did not match its prestigious origins. Josiah Lilly owned the Duesenberg for only about a year before selling it. Duesenberg was already a brand reserved for America's wealthiest elite, while the Walker coupe was created at one point. Its history took an almost unbelievable turn. A car that had once cost $25,000 and been custom-built for one of the wealthiest men in America was used as a tow vehicle at a gas station. It was used to pull other cars in and out of fields, before eventually sitting idle for years. A masterpiece that had once stood at the pinnacle of American automotive engineering had nearly become a pile of scrap metal. The story began to change in the early 1990s, when Duesenberg restoration expert Randy Ema heard about the Walker coupe sitting on Long Island. Ema spent years trying to gain access to the car, and when he finally saw it in person in 1994, he realized he was looking at one of the most extraordinary surviving Duesenbergs. Ema also knew that Jay Leno was a passionate Duesenberg enthusiast, so he told him about the car. Leno then began trying to acquire it. The negotiations lasted roughly a year, and he eventually purchased the car for approximately $500,000. But buying the car was only the beginning. Leno wanted to bring the Walker coupe to the 1996 Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance, one of the world's most prestigious events for classic automobiles. That meant Randy Ema and his restoration team had only about a year to return the car to a condition worthy of its history. The work was carried out at an extraordinary pace, with some days lasting as long as 14 hours. When the event was only days away, the car was still not completely finished mechanically, but Leno decided to take it to Pebble Beach anyway. In the end, the Duesenberg won the Most Elegant Award and placed second in its class. Today, the value of the Walker coupe is often estimated at around $20 million or more. But it is impossible to determine an exact price because there is no comparable second example to use as a reference. It is a one-of-a-kind automobile, built for a specific individual, featuring a unique design that was never repeated and a history that is almost impossible to recreate. So if it were ever put up for auction, its true value could ultimately depend on how many people are wealthy enough and determined enough to own a unique piece of American automotive history. The next car almost deliberately hides beneath the most ordinary appearance imaginable. The Ford Shogun. Created from a tiny 1980s Ford Festiva, Chuck Beck and racing driver Rick Titus removed the original engine, installed Ford Taurus SHO's 220 horsepower V6 behind the front seats, and converted the drivetrain to rear-wheel drive. From the outside, it still looked almost like an ordinary Festiva. But underneath was a machine weighing less than a ton that could accelerate from 0 to 60 mph in around 4.6 seconds. The original plan was to produce 250 cars, but a price of around $42,000 in 1990 made the project nearly impossible to sell. In the end, only 8 were completed, and Jay Leno owns chassis number 3. He even added a nitrous oxide system, turning a car that looked completely unremarkable into a genuine monster. But if the Ford Shogun impresses because of the power hidden beneath its ordinary appearance, designer Randy Grubb's decapods are strange in an entirely different way. Grubb took Piaggio scooters, stripped away their plastic bodywork, and replaced it with hand-shaped aluminum panels assembled with rivets in the Art Deco style. The result looks more like a vehicle straight out of the world of Flash Gordon than an ordinary scooter. Interestingly, beneath that science fiction exterior, most of the mechanical systems remain unchanged. The vehicle still leans when cornering, and it can only reach around 21 km. Only a very small number of decapods were ever built, and Jay Leno owns the first 2. These bizarre machines, almost impossible to place into any conventional category, perhaps demonstrate Leno's collecting philosophy better than anything else. He is not simply looking for expensive cars, but for things so unique that they are almost impossible to replace. What began as a quick idea sketched on a napkin eventually became the most extraordinary car in Jay Leno's garage. Because he did not simply buy it after it was produced, he directly took part in creating it. This time, the idea came from a conversation between Leno and Bernard Juchli, the master mechanic who ran his garage for many years. Juchli then took the sketch to Ed Welburn, who at the time was vice president of global design at General Motors, and within roughly 2 weeks, GM's advanced design studio in North Hollywood had transformed the simple drawing into a complete design inspired by fighter jets and Formula One race cars. The result was called the EcoJet, unveiled at the 2006 SEMA show in Las Vegas. The car used a hydroformed aluminum frame based on a modified Corvette Z06 platform with an exterior body made from carbon fiber reinforced with Kevlar. But what truly made the EcoJet different was hidden beneath that bodywork. A Honeywell LT-101 turbine engine, the same type of engine once used in Bell 222 helicopters and U.S. Coast Guard rescue helicopters. It produced around 650 horsepower, turning a road car into something that sounded more like an aircraft engine than an automobile. The EcoJet also ran on biofuel, with a small separate jet fuel tank used solely for startup before the system switched over to its primary fuel. Its fuel economy, however, was almost a joke. The car managed only around 6 miles per gallon, prompting Leno to joke that if he wanted to drive it regularly, he might have to wait until after a particularly successful harvest. In theory, the EcoJet could reach nearly 245 mph. In reality, however, it was never intended to become a production car. It was proof that turbine engines could still deliver astonishing performance decades after Chrysler's similar experiment had failed. Placed beside the Chrysler turbine car in Leno's garage, the 2 vehicles almost form a conversation spanning more than 40 years. 2 generations of engineers, 2 eras of technology, and 2 completely different approaches, yet both pursued the same question. Could a turbine engine truly become the heart of a road-going automobile? Both proved that it could be done, but the automotive industry ultimately chose a different path. Most viewers remember the McLarens or Lamborghinis in Leno's garage, while very few realize that he is preserving 2 automotive jet engine experiments built decades apart. And turbine technology was not the only technology that disappeared from the automotive industry, but was preserved by Leno. Dig deeper into the collection, and you begin encountering names that have almost completely disappeared from the memory of modern car enthusiasts. One of them is Wills St. Clair, a brand created by C. Harold Wills, a man who was anything but an outsider in the automotive industry. I was one of Henry Ford's earliest employees. Played an important role in developing the nickel-chromium vanadium steel used for the Model T's frame, and was even reportedly the person who personally hand-lettered Ford's famous blue oval logo. Wills left Ford in 1919 with a considerable fortune and used that money to establish his own automobile company in Marysville, Michigan. Wills St. Clair cars were equipped with overhead cam V8 engines developed by the company itself, featuring a unique cooling system that did not require a water pump. The company ultimately produced around 12,000 to 14,000 cars before going bankrupt, and today only around 80 are believed to survive. Leno's car spent decades forgotten inside a container in the desert before eventually being discovered and restored. The garage also contains an NSU Spider, a model often regarded as the first commercially sold Wankel-engined automobile, appearing years before Mazda turned rotary engines into a famous part of automotive history. From 1964 to 1967, NSU produced only two 375 Spiders. Its rear-mounted engine produced around 54 horsepower, a modest figure but one that housed an entirely new technology. NSU later bet its future on a larger rotary-powered sedan. But the seal problems that had appeared in the Spider continued to become a serious weakness, ultimately contributing to the brand's merger with Audi. And that is still not all. The collection also includes the Jensen CV8, a British Grand Tourer that combined an American Chrysler V8 engine with a fiberglass body mounted to steel doors and an adjustable suspension system. It was an unusual fusion of American engineering and British styling, the kind of combination that sounds like an idea from the future, but actually appeared in the 1960s. Only around 500 Jensen CV8s were produced between 1962 and 1966, and for decades, the model was almost completely overshadowed by its more famous successor, the Jensen Interceptor. The Mercedes-Benz 600 was never an ordinary luxury car. Every power window, sunroof, seat, and even the trunk lid was operated by a complex hydraulic system rather than conventional electric motors. Mercedes built it throughout the 1960s and 1970s with almost no concern for cost, turning the car into one of the most expensive automobiles in the world at the time. It quickly became a familiar choice among heads of state, powerful businessmen, and numerous authoritarian leaders, alongside famous owners such as John Lennon and Elvis Presley. The technology behind the Mercedes was equally extraordinary. The all-steel body was firmly mounted to a chassis so rigid that lifting one corner of the car could raise both wheels on the same side off the ground. Fully equipped, the car weighed more than 5,000 pounds, yet its 6.3-liter V8 could still propel it to around 130 mph. Mercedes also produced special versions such as the Landaulet, with a retractable rear roof section for use in parades, the extended Pullman limousine with rear-facing seats, and armored versions for customers requiring additional protection. But the car he owns today is even more special, because it carries something Mercedes never offered from the factory: a supercharger. That supercharger was installed by Karl Middelhoff, a restoration specialist renowned for his work on Mercedes 600s. He kept the original 6.3-liter V8 engine, but added a fuel injection system and supercharger, increasing the output from around 300 horsepower to approximately 525 horsepower. Based on what can be determined, Leno's car is the only surviving supercharged Mercedes 600. A limousine originally designed to transport heads of state in silence now possesses the power of a high-performance car. But owning a car like this is by no means easy. A single original window switch can cost thousands of dollars to replace, while the hydraulic system that operates nearly every function inside the car is notoriously complex and expensive to maintain. That is why many owners are almost afraid to drive their Mercedes 600s. Leno is the opposite. He still takes the car out on the road, just as he does with his turbine cars, Ford Shogun, and vehicles from brands that have disappeared from the market. And that may be the biggest difference between his garage and a conventional automobile museum. A museum tries to protect rare cars behind glass and lets people admire them from a distance. Leno starts the engine and brings them back to life. Perhaps what makes Jay Leno's garage so special is not the number of cars it contains, or the total value reaching tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars. What is even more remarkable is that every car seems to have a story of its own. One was a childhood dream, another was once forgotten, another nearly disappeared from history, and another was partly created by Leno himself. To him, it is not simply a collection of automobiles, but more like a living museum of history, technology, and the dreams that people once poured into these machines on wheels. If you could step inside Jay Leno's garage and were allowed to choose just one car to sit behind the wheel of, which one would you choose? A Duesenberg worth tens of millions of dollars? A Chrysler turbine once considered the car of the future? Or one of those bizarre machines that are almost impossible to find a second example of? Thank you for following this story. If you enjoy stories behind legendary cars and the extraordinary people who own them, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next stories.